Chapter 1541. Wang. An extremely cold storm containing unimaginably low temperatures descended from the sky, rubbing against the air. As the air trembled, it madly landed on the streets. Boom! Amidst the rumbling, an extremely cold storm exploded, blowing across the street. Kacha kacha kacha. Under the attack of the freezing temperature, the ground slowly froze into ice. Paw, 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 paw. The stalls around the street were instantly shattered under the attack of the cold storm. The fragments froze into ice cubes and were swept into the storm, turning into frozen bullets that shot out in all directions. Ah! The people who were already on the street were all attacked by the extremely cold storm. They cried out in alarm one after another as they were blown away. Only Noah's eyes flashed a second before the extreme cold storm descended from the sky. He hugged Vera, who was at a loss, and disappeared in a flash. Instantly, the streets and buildings within a radius of over 100 meters were all frozen, with the extreme cold storm as the center, turning into a crystalline world of ice. Holding Vera in his arms, Noah dashed out from the edge of this world of ice. He put down the girl in his arms and raised his head. Looking forward, the corner of his mouth curved into a cold arc. Are they here? It wasn't just Noah. Looking at the street that had turned into a world of ice, Vera seemed to know who had the ability to create such a world and spoke with a trembling voice. Maxwell. It was as if he was responding to Vera's call. In front of them, in the middle of the street that had turned into a world of ice, the ground began to shine with a fiery light. Bang! Amidst the sound of an explosion, a pillar of fire blasted the ground and rose from the ground. It soared into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. Within the fire pillar, a figure slowly appeared. He walked in the air as though he was walking on empty ground. In the next second, a young man wearing a red and blue coat walked out of the fire pillar like a clown trying to please the crowd. He floated in the air and was imprinted in the eyes of everyone present. What a beautiful sound! Maxwell lowered his head and looked at Vera with an intoxicated and infatuated expression. His eyes were burning with a crazy passion. I knew that you would know that I'm here, my beloved bride. Being treated by Maxwell's scorching eyes and intoxicated tone, Vera felt goosebumps all over her body and couldn't help but cry out. So disgusting. Hee. Maxwell didn't care about Vera's words at all. Instead, he seemed to be delighted as he said so. You're embarrassed again, my bride. Although this is part of you, you should be used to my love, right? Hearing this, Vera couldn't stop trembling. Disgusting, so disgusting, not to mention Vera, even Noah couldn't stand it. He felt so disgusted that he wanted to vomit. Noah had seen many narcissistic people. But Maxwell's narcissism and delusions to the extreme. Although Luo Hao was also narcissistic, and delusional, at least he didn't give people a disgusting feeling. But Maxwell didn't have the self-awareness of how disgusting his actions were. He still stood there as if he was performing, like a gentleman. One of his hands was clenched into a fist, placed on his left chest, and bowed to Vera. I'm sorry, my bride. Although I knew you were here and wanted to see you earlier, it would be rude if I didn't prepare properly. So, I held myself back. You must have been thinking about me as much as I was thinking about you. Now that I'm here, are you happy? Ugh. Vera was so disgusted that she couldn't speak. She could only tear up and unconsciously lean towards Noah's direction. She reached out and grabbed the corner of Noah's clothes. It was like an insecure young girl subconsciously relying on her sweetheart. The smile on Maxwell's face froze, and the intoxication and infatuation in his eyes slowly disappeared. Then, as if Maxwell finally noticed Noah's existence, he looked at Noah with an emotionless face. That's my bride. Can you please stay away from her? Following Maxwell's words, the surrounding temperatures suddenly alternated between hot and cold. It was very strange. As a result, the entire street that had been frozen into ice kept repeating the process of melting, freezing, melting, and freezing in less than a few seconds. It was as if heaven and earth were changing, and it was frightening. If an ordinary person were to stay in such a space of ice and fire, it would not take long for them to die from the sudden rise and fall of their body temperature. Unfortunately, Noah didn't seem to feel anything. He turned his head and said to Vera in a mocking tone. "Is that what he said? Should I do it?" Vera's head suddenly shook like a rattle drum. She grabbed Noah's clothes tighter and tighter, and even her body leaned against him. Noah patted Vera's head and looked at Maxwell with a faint smile. "It seems that Vera wants to be with me more than you." The corner of Maxwell's eyes twitched, and then he returned to his expressionless state. So that's how it is, so that's how it is." Maxwell's pupils suddenly dilated as he muttered this sentence. His face was distorted as he roared at Noah. "You must have used some despicable means to threaten Vera, right? Bastard!" With that, Maxwell raised both of his hands high. A violent hot wind and an extremely cold wind suddenly exploded from Maxwell's raised hands, turning into an ice and fire storm that alternated between hot and cold. It was mixed with red and blue light, surging in all directions. Without any hesitation, Maxwell waved his hands fiercely, and the soaring ice and fire storm immediately surged out. Like a violent storm, it shrouded the direction where Noah was at. "Be careful!" Vera couldn't help but exclaim. However, Noah's expression didn't change as he looked at the ice and fire storm surging towards him. He didn't move at all. In his body, the energy source that was filled with endless energy suddenly turned into a mana source, allowing the mana to flow throughout his body. In the next second, a huge water wave-like golden ripple undulated on the ground in front of Noah. Inside, a shield that was as thick as a city wall and inlaid with flower petals like decorations suddenly rose up, protecting Noah and Vera behind it. Pang! The raging storm of ice and fire landed on the thick shield like a wave crashing into a reef. It exploded with a bang and was forcibly split apart by the shield, turning into two streams of heat and cold that blew past the two sides of the shield. Noah, who was protected behind the shield and wasn't attacked by the ice and fire storm, suddenly raised a foot and kicked the shield. Dong! Amidst a heavy muffled sound, the huge shield that was as thick as a city wall was sent flying by Noah's kick. It was like the toughest wall, splitting apart the ice and fire storm that surged towards Maxwell in front of it. Maxwell's heart tightened when he saw the huge shield splitting the storm of ice and fire as it charged toward him. He finally regained his senses and leaped up without hesitation, avoiding the shield that was charging toward him. However, Maxwell's pair of eyes suddenly shrank to the size of a needle. Because, almost at the same time Maxwell jumped up and avoided the huge shield, behind the shield, a figure also jumped up and appeared in front of Maxwell. Who else could it be other than Noah? Looking at Maxwell's abrupt change of expression, Noah suddenly smiled, but there wasn't a trace of a smile in his eyes, and it was extremely cold. It's impolite not to reciprocate. After saying that, Noah suddenly turned around and kicked Maxwell's chest fiercely. Pang! The strong and powerful kick brought about a whistling wind, and it kicked Maxwell's chest. Minced meat and bones sputtered like flying pieces of paper. Chapter 1542. Bang! A muffled sound, like a watermelon being smashed, resounded. Amidst the muffled sound, the entire chest of the four-digit demon king named Maxwell burst open by Noah's powerful kick, turning into minced meat and bone fragments that splashed in all directions like water. Just like that, Maxwell's entire chest was blown apart, leaving behind a large, hideous hole. That was undoubtedly a fatal wound. Not to mention humans, except for the Asura gods and Buddhas with extremely tenacious vitality, even demons and ghosts could only die from such injuries if they did not have any special abilities. However, Noah's eyes did not relax at all. Instead, they flashed with an even colder look. With a sidestep, his feet suddenly turned into afterimages, and he continuously kicked in the direction of Maxwell, whose chest had been blown open. Bang, 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 bang. Accompanied by a series of muffled explosions, Maxwell, whose entire chest had been blown open, was hit repeatedly by the raindrops of kicks. Every part of his body was blown up one after another, turning into minced meat and bone fragments that scattered in all directions. Noah, who had directly kicked Maxwell into smithereens, tapped his foot on the void and retreated rapidly. A magic square suddenly flashed in front of him, and an astonishing amount of magical power gathered inside, allowing the light of magical power to illuminate the entire space. Buzz! The next moment, the magic square rotated. Inside, the astonishing magical power gathered into a beam of light that burst out, piercing through the space, and instantly shrouding the surrounding minced meat and bone fragments that scattered in all directions. The minced meat and bone fragments that filled the sky were annihilated into nothingness by the beam of light that contained amazing magical power. Then, the pillar of light that seemed to be able to pierce through the sky rubbed against the air and pierced through the sky without slowing down. It shot out explosively from one end of the castle of vampires and swept towards the horizon. Finally, it disappeared into the distant horizon. The whole process was less than 10 seconds. From the moment Maxwell blasted the ice and fire storm at Noah to the moment Noah smashed Maxwell into pieces without leaving a single trace, the entire process took less than 10 seconds. In 10 seconds, a 4-digit demon king died in the hands of Noah just like that. No. To be more precise, it should be said that they died once. Noah, who had landed steadily on the ground, looked straight ahead, and there was no fluctuation in his dark and deep eyes. It was only at this time that Vera recovered from her daze and hurriedly trotted to Noah's side, habitually grabbing the corner of his clothes. Are you okay? I'm fine. Noah shook his head, his eyes still fixed on the front. But the other side seems to be fine as well. Just as Noah finished speaking, in the space in front of him, a burst of fire and ice suddenly appeared, twisting in the air and converging together, gradually condensing into a human figure. Immediately after, Maxwell, who was completely unharmed, slowly walked out of the flames and snow. He pretended to pat the dust off his coat and said unhappily, "As expected, wanting to rely on your own strength to challenge someone who could face 3 digits of humans in the final trial is more or less unwise, isn't it?" Although he said this, there was no worry or fear on Maxwell's face. Thus, Noah said with a sneer, "You think too highly of yourself, don't you think?" Maxwell's hand movements paused slightly. "When I fought with Az Dakaha, I used all my skills, and with great difficulty, I beat him to the brink of death." Noah said indifferently, "Compared to the strength I used at that time, the strength I use now is not even 1% of that. I couldn't even block this little bit of strength and died once, and you still have the nerve to say that it's only unwise. You should find a place to hide, and train for a few hundred years to measure your own strength." Maxwell's face twitched, and his gaze towards Noah was filled with a shocking murderous intent. "What? You want to kill me?" Noah endured the shocking murderous intent from Maxwell's body, and curled his lips into a smile. "It doesn't matter, today's ending is either you die or I die. You can try to kill me, Maxwell." "No." Noah's eyes flashed. "I should call you Maxwell's paradox, James Clerk Maxwell's imaginary demon." The murderous intent in Maxwell's eyes faded, and was replaced by a deep shock. James Clerk Maxwell. He was an extremely famous physicist and mathematician in the history of England, the founder of classical electrodynamics, and one of the founders of statistical physics. James Clerk Maxwell's On Electricity and Magnetism was respected as the most important physics classic after Newton's Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. Therefore, James Clerk Maxwell was generally regarded as one of the most influential physicists in physics. Without his foundation of electromagnetism, there would be no modern electrotechnics, let alone modern civilization. The scientist even realized that there was an energy control mechanism in nature that opposed the increase of entropy, but he couldn't clearly explain this mechanism. He could only humorously assume that it was a kind of a demon, that is, a spirit or something like that. This kind of a demon was able to follow a certain order and rule, and distribute randomly moving particles into a certain space. In other words, it was a kind of humanoid demon or similar mechanism that could detect and control the movement of a single molecule. This mechanism was conceived by Maxwell in order to illustrate the possibility of violating the second law of thermodynamics. This mechanism was later called Maxwell's demon, or Maxwell's elf. There was no doubt that this kind of existence that was conceived in order to illustrate the possibility of violating the second law of thermodynamics was an existence that was denied by science. Maxwell, on the other hand, was the Maxwell demon that was denied by science. He was a demon that was born from the paradox of hypotheses. This kind of demon, whose existence was denied by science, should have been like a paper tiger, just an illusion that would disappear after being torn up and thrown away. It only needed to use physical attacks to defeat a small number of extremely weak demons, similar to the existence of the lower undead. However, Maxwell was endowed with a powerful spiritual core. This kind of spirit was also an existence that had not yet been recognized by science. The third perpetual motion machine. Noah looked directly at Maxwell. You have the third perpetual motion machine spirit, right? Perpetual motion machine. It was a kind of machine that did not need external input of energy and could constantly move and do external work under the condition of only one heat source. In history, there was a period of time when the invention of this kind of machine was popular, but it was denied one after another. Because, first of all, the machine that did not consume energy and could always do external work violated the law of conservation of energy itself. In the case of no temperature difference, continuously absorbing heat from the sea or air in nature and continuously converting it into mechanical energy, the machine that could move continuously with only one heat source violated the second law of thermodynamics. Therefore, the above two perpetual motion machines were concepts that violated the current objective laws of science and could not be manufactured. The former was collectively known as the first perpetual motion machine. The latter was known as the second perpetual motion machine. As for the third perpetual motion machine, it generally referred to the machine that was always moving. It referred to the essence of the dream of transforming energy into work, consuming energy infinitely to do work, and being able to generate energy out of nothing. Of course, the third perpetual motion machine had not been invented yet. However, Maxwell had the third perpetual motion machine spirit that was completed after 2120. Originally, Maxwell was a kind of a demon that was not recognized by the natural world and did not have a body that belonged to him. And with the support of the third perpetual motion machine spirit that could generate energy out of nothing, this paradox demon without a body could be continuously created. Even if it was smashed into pieces, it could still be restored to its original state. This was the origin of Maxwell's immortal body. This was the information that Noah obtained from Galgi and Bell. Chapter 1543. Seeing Maxwell's ugly expression, Noah's face did not have a trace of joy from exposing the enemy's true colors. Instead, there was a little gloominess on his face. Undoubtedly, he had already understood Maxwell's true colors. However, Noah found that he had no way to use the 10th incarnation of the 10 incarnations, authority, warrior. After understanding the enemy's knowledge, this incarnation could display the power that could even cut off divinity and divinity. If he could use it, it would not be a problem at all to nullify Maxwell's immortal body. However, now, this incarnation could not be used. What did this mean? It meant that the knowledge Noah had now was either wrong or not enough. If it was the former, then Noah needed to consider whether Galgi was deceiving him and deliberately giving him false information, or even he was deceived by Maxwell's false information. If it was the latter, then Maxwell was very likely to be hiding some trump cards. Looking at Maxwell's ugly expression, it was very likely the latter. There was another reason for this inference. It's about time you showed your true abilities, right? Noah looked at Maxwell coldly. So far, I've encountered quite a few powerful opponents. Among them, there's no lack of 4-digit or even 3-digit opponents. Although your strength isn't weak, your body is too fragile. As a 4-digit demon king, it's a little degrading. Wasn't it? From the beginning, Noah did not use any power, nor did he use any powerful noble artifacts. He only used a shield, performed a melee attack, and used the magic cannon once. Maxwell died once in Noah's hands. As a demon king with a 4-digit number, it was indeed a bit of a loss of face. How could the existence that was sent by the Demon King Alliance to monitor Galgi and the others only have this little ability? If Maxwell only relied on teleportation and immortal body to enter the 4-digit number, then the 4-digit number was too cheap. Or, is that really all you have? Noah said sarcastically. Then, maybe I should re-examine whether it is possible to let a fake person enter the 4-digit number class. Noah's words made Maxwell's chest rise and fall slightly, and even his pair of eyes became a little red. It was a sign of extreme anger. Seeing this scene, Vera, who had been tugging at Noah's clothes, could not help but cast a look of admiration at Noah. As a victim who had been followed for 100 years, Vera clearly knew how annoying this demon king Maxwell was. Perhaps Maxwell's strength was not very outstanding among the 4-digit number classes, but no matter how bad it was, he was still a 4-digit number class. Relying on teleportation and immortal body, he was almost invincible, and even 4-digit number classes could not do anything to him. Now, Noah's few words, in addition to the previous rounds of fierce attacks, had forced Maxwell to this point. Vera felt that asking Noah for help in dealing with Maxwell was the best choice she had ever made in her life. Under such circumstances, Maxwell's chest rose and fell slightly for a while, but after a while, he regained his calmness. However, the Demon King who was ranked in the top 4 looked at Noah as if he was looking at a dead person. There was not the slightest emotion in his eyes. Immediately after, Maxwell said this with an expressionless face. You asked for it. After saying that, Maxwell suddenly spread out his hands. A vortex of flames erupted from one hand, and an extremely cold storm rose from the other. It was as if he had caught a red and blue vortex, causing the vortex of flames and the extremely cold storm to sweep across the space. Whing! The space that was engulfed by extreme heat and extreme cold suddenly trembled and began to slowly distort. As a hypothetical demon born from thermodynamics, Maxwell could use the power of fire and ice as he wished. However, the true nature of this power was not to control temperature, but to control the energy produced from the difference in temperature. Compressing the energy produced from the difference in temperature was the power of Maxwell, the demon. Now, Maxwell was controlling this energy, cutting through the realm of cold and warmth, causing the entire space to distort. From the distorted space, pure white aberrations were transferred over from all corners of the ground. They were the 3-headed demonic dragon's clones. Roar, 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 roar. The 2-headed demonic dragons let out roars that shook the air, their blood-red eyes gazing in Noah's direction. Seeing the 2-headed demonic dragons being transferred over, Vera couldn't help but cover her small mouth. Only Noah narrowed his eyes. So you really transported Az-Dakha's clones to the city? It can't be helped. Just like what you said, I'm not a powerful demon king. In order to make up for my shortcomings, I developed the ability to use space to increase my battle strength, just like a summoner's battle style. Maxwell smiled emotionlessly. The Stratum overlords here seem to be hunting for clones. Unfortunately, before that, I've already gathered enough battle strength. I'm going to use this two-headed demonic dragon army to tear you to pieces, then destroy this city completely. Following Maxwell's words, the two-headed demonic dragons roared at the sky, their eyes emitting a murderous glint. However, in the face of this scene, Noah suddenly smiled. In other words, the clones here are almost all of the clones on the ground, right? Seeing Noah's joy instead of fear, even Maxwell couldn't help but be stunned. Then, Noah said sarcastically, "Thank you for giving us a chance to annihilate all of the clones in one go." As soon as his voice fell, "Oh!" a deafening roar suddenly resounded throughout the sky above the city. As the shouts rang out, many figures began to surge out from all directions of the city. There were even many black figures that flew over in midair, charging toward this space. Whoa! Maxwell was shocked. At this moment, Sarah and Shadora, who were riding on a fire dragon and leading a large army, gave their orders. "Now is the time. Everyone, attack!" One by one, the combat members of the community charged forward, bringing with them great morale as they charged toward the twin-headed dragon army with bloodshot eyes. Seeing this, Maxwell finally understood. Noah had long anticipated that he would transfer all three of the three-headed dragon's body parts here, and had long since made preparations. "Mr. Noah." Black Rabbit leaped down from the sky. He gripped a Vajra scepter that was flashing with lightning as he stared in Maxwell's direction. "Black Rabbit is here to help you." It wasn't just Black Rabbit. Letitia, Pest, Fei Niao, Yao, Jack, and the others, including Noah's subordinates, Letitia, Pest, Flying Bird, Yao, Aisha, Jack, and the others, all appeared at the scene and began to gather around Noah and Vera. "How is it, Maxwell?" "Demon King Maxwell." Noah looked at Maxwell with a faint smile. "Do you like this surprise? Did you plan this from the start?" Maxwell was furious. "Is that why you used Vera to lure me out?" "You've already said it." "You think too highly of yourself," Noah said mockingly. "I don't need to go to this extent to deal with you." After saying this, Noah turned to his companions and said, "Go and deal with the twin-headed dragons. You guys go deal with AZ Dakaha's split body. I'll be fine here." Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Letitia, Pest, and the others nodded without any hesitation. They turned around and charged into the battlefield, beginning their slaughter. "Vera," Noah also said to Vera beside him. "You go as well." "Oh," Vera nodded obediently. However, her obedient appearance stimulated Maxwell. "Other than me, no one else can order Vera around." Amidst his furious roar, Maxwell suddenly disappeared from where he stood. With a spatial jump, he appeared before Noah and pounced at Noah with bloodshot eyes. Seeing Maxwell appear before him, the mockery in Noah's eyes grew even stronger. Divine power surged out from his body. Chapter 1544. Bang! The raging flame vortex and the icy cold storm exploded on the ground at the same time, turning into an impact wave of alternating hot and cold. Along with the surging airflow of red and blue, it spread wildly to the surroundings. Faced with such a berserk power, not to mention the members of the various communities, even the three-headed dragon's army of clones were unwilling to get close to it. All of them shouted and roared as they fled, distancing themselves from the area and creating a large empty space for the three-headed dragon to fight. As a result, the raging flames and ice alternately burned the surrounding streets and buildings, and then froze them into ice. In an instant, a large area of the surrounding open space was turned into a barren land. Although that power was not terrifying, it was still quite amazing. Although Maxwell claimed that he was not a demon king with great power, that was only relative. No matter what, Maxwell was a four-digit existence. The all-out attack of a four-digit demon king, even if it was not the type that specialized in strength, was still quite terrifying for those below the four-digit level. If Maxwell was willing, it would not be difficult to destroy a city in an instant with this move alone. However, for Noah, such a simple attack of flames and ice really did not pose much of a threat. Therefore, in the face of the incoming flame vortex and icy cold storm, Noah only raised one hand, clenched it into a fist, and instantly blasted it out. Dong! The fist that even shook the atmosphere set off a violent impact wave, turning into an invisible impact wave that collided head-on with the incoming flame vortex and icy cold storm, and forcibly dispersed them. However, at this moment, Maxwell cut through the realm of cold and heat, causing the space to distort. With a space jump, he instantly flashed behind Noah. "Die for me." In the cold and crazy voice, Maxwell rolled up flames in one hand and ice in the other. Both of his hands were thrown out, aiming at Noah's back, and heavily blasted it. In the past, Maxwell had used this move time and time again. Because, with the ability to teleport, almost no one could keep up with Maxwell's rhythm. If it were another person, at this moment, even if they reacted, they would not be able to avoid Maxwell's attack. Unfortunately, Maxwell had picked the wrong opponent. Teleportation was indeed very powerful. However, with his superb sensing ability, Noah was able to detect the location of Maxwell's appearance when he was in Maxwell's slicing realm and distorting space, and react in time. After all, this move of teleportation was actually a space jump. The moment he jumped out of the space itself would definitely fluctuate a little. Noah only needed to use his sensing ability to detect the space fluctuation after Maxwell performed the space jump. Then, he would know the location of Maxwell's teleportation. Therefore, before the raging flames and ice and snow came crashing down, Noah spun around and kicked out. Dong! It was an ordinary kick, but it caused the raging flames and ice to explode, creating a burst of fire and cold wind. It was like an explosion, shaking in all directions. Bang! In the next second, a heavy muffled sound rang out from the center of the trembling flames and cold wind. Goo-woo! Maxwell's muffled groan also rang out amidst the flames and snow. Immediately after, his entire body flew out and smashed into the ground like an arrow that had been shot from a bow. Damn it! Maxwell gritted his teeth and got up. His body was covered in flames and ice and snow again. However, before Maxwell could attack again, waves of golden ripples suddenly flashed out from the space around him. In a moment, Maxwell was surrounded. Inside, various weapons such as sabers, swords, spears, and halberds suddenly popped out like loaded bullets, aiming in Maxwell's direction. Oh no! Maxwell was shocked. Without any hesitation, he performed a space jump and disappeared from where he was. Almost at the same time, various weapons such as sabers, swords, spears, and halberds that popped out from the golden ripples suddenly turned into beams of light and landed on Maxwell's original position. Rumble. The powerful treasures either collided with each other or exploded the ground, stirring up a surging wave of fire that blew to the surroundings. Maxwell, who used the space jump ability to escape, did not have time to breathe a sigh of relief. A faint voice sounded behind him. Where are you looking?" The pores on Maxwell's body instantly widened. Clang! A streak of sword light flashed behind Maxwell. With a clear sword hum, it flashed through space and slashed in Maxwell's direction. Poochie! This time, Maxwell did not use the space jump in time. The sword light cut through the space and cut through his waist. In the tearing sound, his body was cut in half. However, one of the two halves of the body suddenly turned into flames and the other into ice and snow. Just like that, they disappeared on the spot and reappeared in another space. Immediately, the flames and ice gathered together and turned into a human figure. It was Maxwell's appearance again. Seeing this, Noah, who was holding a luxurious knight's sword, frowned slightly. He felt that this was a bit tricky. Sure enough, ordinary means can't kill him. Maxwell seemed to have thought of this as well. He regained his composure and sneered at Noah. "Yes, you're very strong, but you can't kill me." Saying this, Maxwell raised his hand, and once again, flames and ice and snow rolled up in his hand. "Also, my battle strength is not only limited to the human body in the final trial. I still have my own collection." The vortex of flames and ice suddenly danced in the space. Among them, one figure after another began to slowly appear and walk out. Apart from the above three plans, there was basically no way to defeat the third perpetual motion machine. Of course, just because he couldn't defeat them didn't mean that he couldn't seal them either. "Looks like I have no choice but to seal this stalker." After making up his mind, Noah immediately raised his head and looked at the sky. There, Maxwell appeared from the spiraling flames and ice. He stared at Noah with an extremely dark gaze. Damn it, Noah thought that it was too difficult to deal with Maxwell, but how could Maxwell not think that it was too difficult to deal with Noah? Even Az-Dakaha, a three-digit demon king, could not deal with Noah, so what could Maxwell, a four-digit demon king, do to Noah? At best, Maxwell relied on the spiritual lattice of the third perpetual motion machine to save his life. In the hands of Noah, Maxwell would definitely not be able to get away with it. This fact made Maxwell extremely angry, but it was of no use. After a while, Maxwell took a deep breath and suddenly laughed. "I'm really confused, why am I entangled with you here?" This sentence, unsurprisingly, made Noah stunned. Immediately after, Maxwell muttered to himself as if he was talking to himself. "Although not being able to deal with a hateful person is indeed unsatisfying, I came here to pick up my beautiful bride. For my Vera, everything else is not important." Hearing this, Noah's eyes narrowed, but his heart was shocked. Could it be that Maxwell was preparing to leave the battle and go straight for Vera? Sure enough, in the next moment, Maxwell seemed to be infatuated as he shouted in an extremely intoxicated manner. "That's right. I only have my Vera in my heart. Vera! Wait for me." As soon as he finished speaking, Maxwell's figure suddenly disappeared on the spot. "Don't even think about it." Noah stretched out his hand without hesitation. A wave-like golden ripple appeared in the air. From within, a scroll made of parchment flew out and landed in Noah's hand. It burned and turned into ashes. On the other side, the legions of the community stationed in the vampire castle were fiercely fighting against the two-headed dragon army formed by Az-Dakaha's doppelgangers. However, at a certain moment, in the center of the battlefield, an unimaginable scene suddenly appeared. Summon! Fool's calamity fire. Amidst a cute shout, a pale flame suddenly rose from the center of the battlefield, releasing an unimaginable amount of heat. It roasted the atmosphere and turned into a pillar of fire that rushed into the sky. The pale flame pillar rubbed against the air, and even the air was completely evaporated. It directly extended to the curtains of the courtyard. Thus, the scorching firestorm scattered the sea of clouds in the sky. It continued to revolve, incinerating the two-headed dragons into nothingness. At this moment, on the battlefield, everyone was dumbstruck as they looked at the pillar of flame that rushed into the clouds and released a terrifying amount of heat. Their faces were filled with shock. Under such circumstances, Vera stood at the center of the pillar of flame. She raised her small hand high and continuously released surging pale flames. Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Letitia, Pest, and the others who were bravely fighting on the battlefield also looked at the pillar of flame that rose into the clouds and incinerated the two-headed dragons into nothingness. For a moment, they were shocked. How powerful, that! Is that the power of the Northern District's strongest demon? Evidently, no one expected that little girl who appeared harmless and easily aroused one's desire to protect would actually possess this level of power. The pale flames that Vera used were no ordinary flames. That was the karmic fire that was directly summoned from the underworld. Vera was a great demon that could freely travel between the realms of life and death. As for the realms of life and death, they naturally referred to the underworld and the underworld. At this moment, Vera was controlling the power of the realms of life and death. She had connected herself with the underworld and summoned the karmic fire from the underworld. That was a flame that only required a single lamp to burn down an entire street. Vera unleashed her power, causing the underworld's furnace to collapse and the realms of this world to burn the entire battlefield. Seeing the two-headed dragons being incinerated by the pale flames of hell, the people present finally experienced the power of the Northern District's strongest demon. Vera's power was most definitely comparable to that of deities, or even surpassing them. This also meant that Vera was at least a 5-digit, or even a 4-digit existence. With such an existence, among the people present, except for the 4-digit Letitia and the Queen's Knight, there was probably no one who could contend against her. However, such an existence could do nothing to Maxwell. Vera, who was continuously summoning the pale flames, suddenly widened her eyes and disappeared from her original position. Almost at the same time, a figure flashed in Vera's original position and pounced on empty air. The pillar of pale flames that shot straight into the sky was suddenly extinguished. Vera appeared from another position and exclaimed in surprise when she saw the figure standing in front of her. "Why are you here?" The person who came was naturally Maxwell. "Vera, my most beloved bride." Maxwell ignored Vera's question and stared at her with a scorching gaze. He spoke as if he was intoxicated. "Come, I'll take you away from here now." "No." Vera rejected without hesitation. Unfortunately, Maxwell did not care about Vera's rejection. With a space leap, he appeared in front of Vera and opened his arms in her direction. "Come with me." Before he could finish his sentence, another voice sounded. "Dream on." A faint light bloomed in front of Vera. Within the faint light, Noah's figure appeared, turned into a bullet, and flew in front of Maxwell. Q-dash. A fist carrying a strong gust of wind roared towards Maxwell. Maxwell's expression cleared and instantly disappeared from his original position, causing the fist to land on empty air. Looking at Noah in front of Vera, Maxwell's expression became a little twisted. "Are you going to stop me from reuniting with Vera no matter what?" Hearing Maxwell's words, Noah's eyes were cold. "Are you going to get Vera no matter what?" Maxwell answered without hesitation. "Isn't that obvious?" "Is that so?" Noah closed his eyes and then suddenly opened them. "Unfortunately, you will never be able to do it." After that, Noah suddenly turned around and hugged Vera. "Ha!" Vera did not react at all. By the time Vera reacted, Noah's face had suddenly enlarged in her eyes. Then, he captured Vera's lips. Chapter 1546. For a moment, Vera didn't understand what was going on at all. She could only stare blankly at the face so close to her, her mind completely blank. It wasn't until her lips were pried open and the tip of her tongue was captured, entangling with another tongue, that Vera finally realized what was going on. As expected, Vera's pretty face turned red. Even her delicate body tensed up, and her eyes trembled violently. She subconsciously reached out her hand and pushed against Noah's chest with all her might. However, Noah was like an unshakable iron tower. His body wasn't affected by Vera's push at all. One of his hands hugged Vera's slender waist, while the other caressed Vera's head. Then, following the strands of her hair, he gently stroked Vera's back. That unexpectedly gentle action, as well as the complete opposite of his actions, was extremely domineering as he captured her tongue. The continuous intertwining of his tongue made Vera feel as though an electric current was running from the soles of her feet to her brain, causing her to feel numb. This feeling made Vera's beautiful face redder and redder. Her violently trembling eyes also became moist and moist. Thus, Vera's hand that was pushing Noah's chest gradually weakened. Her delicate body was still trembling slightly, and she couldn't help but close her eyes. She was extremely passive as Noah continued to entangle her. The sudden appearance of the pink scene made Maxwell's expression turn sluggish. His eyes seemed to have lost focus and gradually enlarged. He was completely stunned on the spot. Ignoring Maxwell's performance, Noah wantonly tasted the sweet lips and tongue of the girl in his arms. He continued to caress Vera's back while the hand that was hugging Vera's slender waist became tighter and tighter. Vera's beautiful figure was pulled into his embrace. Suddenly, Vera's ample bosom, which he had felt up close before, pressed against Noah's chest. Noah's heart couldn't help but be slightly moved, and he kissed even more passionately. At this moment, it was as though time had stopped in the entire world. Only Noah and Vera were left in this space, hugging and kissing each other. Disregarding Noah, who was concentrating on enjoying the girl's fragrance, Vera was driven by an inconceivable pleasure that she had never felt before. She could only passively accept Noah's invasion. As a result, this kiss lasted for a full 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, Noah seemed to be satisfied and released the girl's lips in his arms. Ha! Ha! Vera immediately became breathless as though she had done some intense exercise. She had never experienced something like this before, so Vera's eyes seemed to be unfocused. She panted slightly while gazing at Noah in a daze. She didn't react for a long time. When his eyes met Vera's dazed gaze, Noah felt pity and domineeringly embraced Vera as he declared, "Don't worry, Vera, I will never hand you over to that stalker." At that moment, without any hesitation, Noah turned around and hugged Vera, protecting the completely unresponsive Vera in his arms. Buzz! Accompanied by the sound of space trembling, the two steel angels suddenly disappeared on the spot. When they reappeared, they were already behind Noah. The two steel angels could also use space jump. The two steel swords swung down from the hands of the steel angels at the same time, causing a sharp sound of breaking through the air, cutting through the atmosphere, and heavily striking Noah's back. Clang! Another neat sound rang out. Amidst the ringing of a bell, the two steel greatswords were bounced back by Noah's body, who possessed the sovereignty of the Leo constellation and the gift of invulnerability. However, at the same time, Noah felt an extremely heavy force from the two steel swords that struck down. That force was not inferior to the full blow of people with extraordinary physical abilities such as Noah, 16 Knights, and Galgi. If it weren't for the LV6 durability that dissolved this force, the sword protection that weakened the physical attack to a certain extent, the development ability of swordsman that weakened the attack power of sword-type weapons, and the sovereignty of the Leo constellation that bounced off most of the force, Noah would have been directly smashed away by the heavy blow of the two steel angels. But even so, Noah still couldn't help but groan, and a fierce light flashed in his eyes. Who? The next moment, Noah hugged Vera, turned around, and kicked out a powerful kick on the chests of the two steel angels. Bang! In the sound of metal bursting, the chests of the two steel angels were heavily smashed by Noah's kick, and they fell apart in midair. However, the two steel angels that fell apart suddenly stopped in midair, turned into a mist, condensed together, and returned to their original state in an instant. What? Noah couldn't help but be surprised. Space jump. Immortal body. These two steel angels actually had the same ability as Maxwell. Chapter 1547. The blurry shadow tore through the obstacles in the air with a faint sound, wiping out the distance of hundreds of meters in less than a second. It shuttled through space and appeared in front of the two steel angels. Who? A fist carrying a vigorous wind blasted out and smashed into the abdomens of the two steel angels. The steel angels obviously didn't have any intelligence and could only rely on their instincts to fight. They only reacted when the fist was about to reach them and raised the weapons in their hands. Clang! The fist carrying a terrifying power immediately landed heavily on the weapons of the two steel angels, causing a crisp sound of metal clashing. A circle of shock waves shook the ground, causing cracks to appear on the ground and spreading out. The two steel angels were directly smashed back by the heavy fist. They flew back like cannonballs due to the friction in the air. A pair of wings flapped wildly, and it wasn't until they retreated for a long distance that they resolved the force and stabilized their bodies. At this moment, two spears pierced through the sky like two bright streamers. They flashed through space and caught up with the two steel angels in an instant, landing on their bodies. Bang! Accompanied by a neat muffled explosion, the two steel angels were directly smashed into pieces by the two spears. They scattered into a pile of steel fragments and scattered in the air. However, the steel fragments that scattered in the air suddenly stagnated and turned into a mist. They gathered together and transformed into the two steel angels again. Are they really immortal? Noah slowly withdrew his fist, and his eyes flickered. That. Vera stood to the side, seemingly not knowing whether to help or not. It's okay, just stay there obediently. Noah seemed to have seen through Vera's thoughts and said directly. Leave it to me. But Vera said hesitantly. Those angels seem to be like Maxwell. They can't be killed. No, only Maxwell is truly immortal. After all, it's the third perpetual motion machine. It itself symbolizes eternity. If it could be killed so easily, then it wouldn't be the dream crystallization of the entire human future science. Noah narrowed his eyes. But because of this, I don't believe that the third perpetual motion machine can be used on two angel dolls. The immortality of those angels is definitely not as strong as Maxwell's. Is that so? Vera tilted her head. Then, can you get rid of them? No problem. Noah said faintly. Although I need to use some real power. After saying that, Noah closed his eyes and softly chanted. I am the conqueror who can defeat 1,000, 1,000, 10,000, and 10,000. Now, for me who stands on the side of justice, give me divine power. In the depths of Noah's heart, the stone plate that symbolized the authority of the 10 incarnations finally trembled. It suddenly turned and pointed in the direction of the thunder. Swoosh! Almost at the same time, the two steel angels used space jump at the same time and appeared in front of Noah. The steel greatswords in their hands suddenly swung down and slashed at Noah's head. In response, Noah didn't even open his eyes. He only raised one hand. Boom! A burst of violent lightning suddenly appeared around the two steel angels. It turned into a spherical lightning cage and wrapped the two steel angels inside. Beep, beep, beep. Amidst the chaotic sound of electric shocks, thick bolts of lightning moved back and forth on the two steel angels' bodies, causing the two steel angels' bodies to tremble violently. Immediately, under the direct attack of the powerful lightning, the steel skin on the two steel angels' bodies was electrolyzed one by one, shattered, and annihilated. In the end, they completely disappeared in the two lightning cages. This time, the fog didn't appear again. The two steel angels disappeared in the violent lightning, as if they didn't exist in the first place. They completely disappeared without a trace. The steel angels weren't ordinary mechanical dolls. With physical strength comparable to Noah, 16 knights, and Galgi, it meant that the bodies of these angels were at least at the level of gods. Coupled with space jump and regeneration ability, the abilities of the steel angels were estimated to be on par with the first generation of Azidaka's body. Unfortunately, these two god-level angels were so easily destroyed by Noah's hands. This made Vera couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. Sure enough, as Noah said, the third perpetual motion machine's spiritual core was at best owned by Maxwell. It was impossible for some puppet-like steel angels to have it. However, just as Vera was relieved, she suddenly tensed up again in the next second. Whing! In front of her, in the space covered by the pure white light like a cocoon, there was a trembling sound. In the trembling sound, steel angels holding sharp swords and pointed spears appeared one after another from the space. They flapped the wings on their back and slowly floated out of the light. In the blink of an eye, there were more than a dozen such steel angels. And those dozen steel angels were all at the level of gods. Liar. Vera murmured in disbelief. Even Noah frowned tightly, as if he understood something, and smacked his lips. So that's how it is. Is there a group of gods backing him? Those god-level angels were definitely not something that Maxwell could create. Then, there was no doubt that it was the group of gods controlling the Demon King Alliance behind the scenes to provide combat power to Maxwell. If they allowed Maxwell to continue summoning like this, perhaps Maxwell could really create an entire army of deities. At that time, it was likely that Maxwell's threat would really be able to rival Aziz Dakaha. Realizing this, Noah clenched his fists, and the divine power and the energy source in his body was like a surging current, instantly flowing through his whole body. I will use these words to provoke the gods in heaven, exercise this magic, chant this incantation, and make everything in the world bow and kneel. In the depths of his heart, the stone plate that was originally pointing in the direction of thunder suddenly turned and pointed at priest. Not knowing if it was because they felt a threat from Noah at this moment, the dozen steel angels suddenly became restless. In the next moment, those steel angels suddenly disappeared in place. Like phantoms, they appeared around Noah without any warning and rushed in from all directions. Sharp steel swords were raised high by the steel angels surrounding Noah. It was believed that in a second, those weapons that could easily split rocks would mercilessly fall on Noah's body. Be careful. Vera softly called out. However, the person in question, Noah, acted as if he didn't see anything and whispered. Stop. His understated words, like a spring breeze, turned into an invisible force that fluctuated in all directions. The steel angels that were swept by the invisible force like ripples became sluggish, as if they were entangled by an invisible spider web, and could no longer move in the slightest. Ignoring the steel angels, Noah stretched out a hand and wrote a mysterious rune in the air. Clang! One rune after another flashed in the air, emitting a bright light, and turned into a stream of light that flew toward the unknown source of light like a cocoon. In the blink of an eye, the runes surrounded the unknown source of light like a cocoon, forming the shape of a sphere made of mysterious characters. Noah opened his eyes, and with a "pa" sound, he put his palms together. Seal! The runes suddenly blossomed with a strong light, turning into a crystal sphere with runes engraved on its surface. It enveloped the unknown source of light and slowly shrunk. Ah! From the unknown source of light, Maxwell's roar resounded. Chapter 1548. Hum 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 hum. The surface of the crystal barrier engraved with mysterious runes was continuously compressed in a spherical shape, causing the unknown light source to tremble violently. Ah! Maxwell's roars continued to resound from the trembling unknown light source. His voice was filled with intense madness, like a wild beast that was trapped in a cage and was desperately struggling to break free. He kept howling. Hearing the bone-chilling roars, Vera couldn't help but take a small step back. Noah, on the other hand, kept his palms together and muttered to himself sarcastically. It seems that you have lost your mind. Then stay like this and never wake up. After saying that, Noah extracted the divine power from the divine power source in his body and turned the surging divine power into a golden wave that burst out from his body. Thus, with the support of abundant divine power, the mysterious runes engraved on the surface of the crystalline barrier suddenly flashed with an even more intense radiance. The trembling of the unknown source of light slightly pushed the spherical crystal barrier apart and did its best to compress it. Hum 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 hum. The squeezed unknown light source trembled even more violently. Ah! Maxwell's crazy roars also became more violent. That sound was like a wild animal that was about to be slaughtered, full of despair and pain. However, as the crystalline barrier engraved with mysterious runes continued to shrink, Maxwell's frenzied roars became weaker and weaker. The tremors of the unknown light source also became fainter and fainter. When the translucent barrier turned into a palm-sized jade, the mysterious runes on its surface also shrunk to the size of a mosquito. Whether it was the trembling of the unknown light source or Maxwell's roar, they all disappeared. Phew! Noah exhaled deeply and stretched out a hand in the direction of the jade. The jade floating in mid-air immediately trembled as if it was being pulled by an invisible hand. It flew through the air and landed in Noah's hand. The seal is complete. Noah held the precious jade in his hand tightly and smiled. He then lifted his head and looked at the steel angels who were frozen in space by the spirit of words. The smile on his face gradually turned icy cold. Translator's note: Toby is a Chinese idiom. As for you all, there is no need for you to continue existing. The stone plate that was pointing at the priest began to rotate again, pointing back in the direction of the thunder. Beep, beep, beep. Rings of resplendent lightning burst out around the steel angels. Just like before, they turned into ball-shaped lightning cages that enveloped them, causing the violent lightning to crazily scurry around those steel angels. There was no suspense. Under the continuous strikes of the scorching lightning bolts, the steel surface of the angels began to crumble and disintegrate. In the end, they completely disappeared from this space like evaporating air. Seeing Noah instantly dispose of more than a dozen divine-level steel angels and completely seal Maxwell, who had been pestering her for so long, Vera's expression was a little absent-minded. Although she was quite innocent, it did not mean that Vera really did not understand anything. At least, Vera now believed. She believed that Noah definitely had the ability to contend with 3 digits of the Demon King, who was known as the final human trial, Az-Dakaha. Noah did not know if he felt Vera's gaze, but he turned around and looked at Vera. What's wrong? Noah raised the precious jade in his hand. Could it be that you want this? Upon hearing this, Vera's entire body quivered. Without any hesitation, he shook his head like a rattle drum. Vera wanted to stay as far away from Maxwell as possible. Furthermore, it was the kind that was as far away as possible. Even if Maxwell was now sealed by Noah, it was the same. Noah naturally knew what Vera was thinking, and he could not help but smile meaningfully. You don't want it, but maybe someone else wants it very much. This sentence made Vera feel a little strange. However, Noah did not explain. He stretched out his empty hand and took out a bag from a sudden golden ripple, and put the precious jade in his hand in it. Seeing this, Vera curiously asked, "What is that?" "A small tool," Noah answered. "With this, unless there are special circumstances, this item will not be lost." In the game Yggdrasil, there were skills and tools that could steal items from the player's inventory. Therefore, in the game, there were also anti-theft methods. The bag Noah was using now was one of them. If the item was put in, then no matter how high the level of skills or tools were used, the item would not be stolen. Of course, Noah did not use this bag because he was worried that someone would steal Maxwell's precious jade. The reason why he used this bag was because in the game Yggdrasil, the skills and tools used to steal belonged to the teleportation category. It could be used to teleport, and it could be used to retrieve the player's items from a spatial perspective. In other words, it was to use a spatial jump on other people's items to teleport the item into one's hands. Because of this, tools to prevent theft usually had the effect of preventing teleportation. Putting Maxwell's precious jade in the bag was to prevent Maxwell's spatial jump from breaking the rules, and there was a possibility that he could teleport out of the seal. Even if the possibility was very small, Noah wanted to prevent it. Noah threw the bag containing the precious jade into the golden ripples and let it disappear. He then turned around and said to Vera, "All right, let's hurry and help the others deal with Az-Dakaha's doppelganger." "Okay." Vera nodded obediently. Then, the two of them left the scene together. Some distance away from the battlefield where Noah, Vera, and Maxwell were, a few figures were standing on the top of a building. After seeing Noah seal Maxwell with his own eyes and go to deal with the three-headed demonic dragon's doppelganger with Vera, Galji's expression was slightly uncertain. In the end, he sighed. Since Maxwell has been dealt with, we should go. As soon as he said this, it immediately attracted a question. Is that okay? Aurora asked doubtfully. Your Highness wants to deal with Maxwell. Other than wanting to break away from the control of the Demon King Alliance, you should also want to get the third perpetual motion machine's soul, right? After an inconspicuous demon obtained the third perpetual motion machine's spirit core, not only did he have the potential to be promoted to a 4-digit number, but he also became an existence that couldn't be defeated. If your Highness can obtain the third perpetual motion machine's spirit core, it will definitely be very helpful, right? Gria also said. Is it okay to leave just like that? It was not Galji who answered Aurora and Gleia's question, but Ling. Do you think your Highness doesn't want the third perpetual motion machine's soul? Ling puffed up her cheeks. It's really too scary to snatch something from that little brother's hands. Indeed, that human strength is very strong, but at best, it's just strength, right? Aurora said so. We can think of a way outside of strength, right? The problem is that the other party is definitely not just a brute with strength. Galji shook his head. That human is really too unfathomable. Where is the bottom line? We can never see the end. With our current strength, it's definitely unwise to be enemies with him. I think so too. Ling agreed with Galji's words. We've just escaped the tiger's den of the Demon King Alliance. If we provoke another terrifying enemy, we'll be courting death. Aurora and Gleia fell silent. Don't think so much. Galji smiled slightly. We've done what we should do. Next, let's wait and see if Noah Doria can really pass the human's final trial. Everyone nodded in agreement. Chapter 1549. In the end, it was only when night fell that the 3 dragon clones that wreaked havoc in the vampire's castle were completely annihilated. As Noah had already informed Sarah and Shadora about this battle in advance and had everyone make preparations, there weren't many casualties. To be more precise, there were almost no casualties. However, there were quite a few people from each community that were injured. As a result, when the battle came to an end, many people directly collapsed. Fortunately, as they had already made preparations for a long battle with Az Dakaha, many of the communities that had the conditions had prepared healing blessings. Because of this, the casualties were kept to a minimum and there wouldn't be any losses. Of course, even with this degree of preparation, there were still some people who were seriously injured that couldn't be healed by ordinary healing blessings. In addition, the healing blessings were limited and there were many people who were injured. Naturally, the supply of healing blessings couldn't meet the demand. Not to mention the others, even Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Sarah, Shadora, and the other young girls were injured to some extent. After returning to the throne hall, all of them were lying down on the ground. With no other choice, Noah could only personally take action. Clang! In the throne hall, a burst of resplendent golden light surged out like a tide and covered the entire space. Ugh! Enveloped by the resplendent golden light, Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Sarah, Shadora, and the other young girls all let out muffled cries of pain and happiness. The injuries on their bodies healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the center of the resplendent golden light, Noah raised his luxurious and gorgeous scabbard high up. Beside him stood Letitia and Pest. These 2 young girls were one of the few people who weren't injured after the battle ended. That was to be expected. Although they were facing Az Dakaha's army of clones and there was no lack of god-level existences among them, Letitia and Pest were no ordinary people. Letitia was one of the few people in the castle of vampires with 4-digit strength. Even if it wasn't easy for her to deal with a group of Aziz Dakaha's clones, it was still difficult for her to sustain any serious injuries. As for Pest, she was a true god. Although she was not the strongest species, as a deity, Pest possessed an extremely powerful life force. It was as if she possessed an undying body. Therefore, even though the two girls were facing so many three-headed dragon avatars, they were still able to remain in perfect condition and did not suffer any injuries. Jack also had an immortal body. Therefore, Jack did not suffer any injuries. Since Ai Xia had been riding on Jack's back the whole time, she didn't suffer any serious injuries. However, she was exhausted after a whole day of continuous fighting. She returned to her base and rested. Of course, Vera and Jack went back with them. Thus, among everyone present, except for 3 people, the rest were all members of no name. The first 2 were naturally Sarah and Shadora. The last person was just like Letitia. She was one of the few queen knights in the castle of vampires who possessed a 4-digit level of power. At this moment, the Queen Knight was staring at the scabbard in Noah's hand that was emitting a resplendent golden light and displaying a powerful healing ability. Beneath the mask, her pretty face seemed to have become more or less serious. Unaware of the Queen Knight's reaction, Noah continued to raise his scabbard. The golden light from the scabbard enveloped the group of girls and healed their injuries. It didn't take long for Black Rabbit, Fei Niao, Yao, Sarah, and Shadora to fully recover from their injuries. Sarah was very surprised by this. Amazing! He actually healed so many people's injuries in such a short period of time. This is the first time I've encountered a blessing with such a powerful healing ability. Mr. Noah's scabbard is indeed very amazing, Shadora nodded repeatedly. Back then, after the Demon King Alliance attacked the City of Glowing Flames, it was also Mr. Noah who used this scabbard to heal all the participants who were seriously injured. If it wasn't for Mr. Noah, there might have been many casualties. I've also used healing blessings that I could carry around with me, but the effects weren't that great. After being bestowed with a simulated divine spark, the healing effects of those blessings were quite good, Flying Bird said emotionally. But, as expected, a cheap blessing that only bestowed with a simulated divine spark is simply unable to match a true divine spark's blessing. I don't think it's a big deal. Yao stroked her slender arm, and her usually expressionless face relaxed a little. It's fine as long as it doesn't hurt. Yes. Black Rabbit said energetically. I remember there's a saying that no matter if it's a white rabbit or a black rabbit, as long as it has rabbit ears, it's a good rabbit. It's the same principle. Something doesn't seem right, does it? Pest retorted in an extremely calm manner. Why do I seem to remember that no matter if it's a white cat or a black cat, as long as it can catch mice, it's a good cat? I know of a saying as well, Letitia sighed. If you're serious, you'll lose. Looking at the group of young ladies who had recovered from their injuries chatting happily, Noah couldn't help but chuckle. The clones that Maxwell had summoned were more or less all of the clones on the ground. Even if there were a few that were missed, there wouldn't be many left. In this battle, not only did they get rid of a demon king with a 4-digit number of clones, they also got rid of so many clones of the 3-headed demonic dragon. In terms of results, it could be considered a complete victory for them. This result allowed the group of girls, who had been tense due to the enormous pressure that Az Dakaha had brought upon them, to finally be able to breathe a sigh of relief. In addition, Noah's return allowed them to finally have a chance of winning against Az Dakaha. It was understandable that everyone was in such a good mood that they were able to relax to such an extent. Thinking up to this point, Noah didn't disturb the group of girls from relaxing. He stood quietly to the side and looked at everyone present with a smile. Suddenly, the pure white Queen Knight walked towards Noah's direction and stopped in front of Noah. The Queen Knight's gaze was fixed on the scabbard in Noah's hand, and said to Noah, "Excuse me, can I have a look at this scabbard?" His words attracted the attention of everyone present. Noah didn't seem to think that the Queen Knight, who he had never talked to before and had only seen a few times, would suddenly make such a request. After being startled for a moment, he didn't refuse. "That's not a problem, but is there anything strange about my scabbard?" For ordinary people, the gift of a divine persona was indeed a mythical existence. However, for the Queen of Halloween's favorite, who was an exceptional existence even among the three-digit numbers, who could be compared to the white yiksha, it didn't seem to be the reason for the other party to have such a sudden reaction. "No, there's nothing strange about your scabbard." The Queen Knight shook her head. "It's just that there are some things that I want to confirm." "Some things that you want to confirm?" Noah's heart moved, and he remembered the Queen Knight's origin, and he handed over the scabbard in his hand with some understanding. "Please do as you wish." "Thank you very much." The Queen Knight nodded in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. She reached out and took the scabbard in Noah's hand. After gently stroking it, she confirmed some things. "Sure enough, this scabbard is a cultic mythical object." "Yes." Noah didn't hide the slightest, and he also explained why the Queen Knight was interested in the scabbard. "It is said that the Queen of Halloween seems to be one of the central figures of the cultic gods, right?" "The Queen is indeed one of the cultic gods in name. In fact, among the people who are directly under the Queen, many of them are knights of the cultic gods." The Queen's Knight returned the scabbard in her hand to Noah and looked straight at him. "If I'm not wrong, this scabbard should have some relationship with King Arthur, right?" Noah smiled slightly and took the scabbard. As expected of the Queen of Halloween's favorite. With Noah's affirmation, the Queen Knight just looked at him and suddenly said such a sentence. "Sir Noah, can we talk?" Chapter 1550. Your Excellency Noah, can we have a talk? When this sentence came out of the Queen Knight's mouth, not only Noah, but even Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, Yao, Letitia, Pest, Sarah, Sandora, and the other girls were stunned on the spot, looking at each other. It was no wonder that everyone had such a reaction. They really did not expect this Queen Knight to suddenly talk to Noah. In fact, if one thought about it carefully, Noah's return to this world had only happened yesterday. Up until today, only 2 days had passed. In these 2 days, after learning that Noah was the hero who had forced Az Dakaha, the final human trial, into a desperate situation, many community leaders in Vampire's Castle had actually come to talk to Noah. There were only 3 purposes for doing so. 1. To confirm whether Noah really had the power to match a demon king in the 3 digits, or whether it was just an empty title. 2. To build a good relationship with Noah, a super powerhouse who could compete with a demon king in the 3 digits. 3. If there was a chance, to poach Noah from No Name and let Noah join their community. For this reason, in these 2 days, Noah not only accepted the sun's sovereignty transferred by White Yiksha, but also fought with the legendary half-star spirit, Great Sage, Heaven's Equal, and got rid of Maxwell. Now, Noah had also met with many of the leaders of the various communities who were gathered in the Vampire Castle and discussed many things with them. Even the leader of Will-O-Wisp, Vera, the strongest demon in the North District, found Noah in an attempt to seek Noah's protection. Not to mention the other communities, all of them scrambled to build a good relationship with Noah and even tried to poach him. In the end, even the people from Salamandra and Dragonhorn Griffin Lion went to look for Noah, as if they wanted to find out if Noah had any intention of jumping ship. In the end, in the entire Vampire's Castle, only 2 communities did not come to find Noah. One of them was Thousand Eyes. The reason why Thousand Eyes did not come to find Noah was not because Noah did not have a way to attract their attention, but because White Yiksha was currently restricted to the sealed land and could not leave. Thousand Eyes naturally had to place their attention there. The other one was the Queen's Knight, who was directly under the Queen of Halloween. For 2 whole days, not only did this female knight not have any intention of having a proper conversation with Noah, she didn't even try to get close to him. Instead, she continued to dutifully carry out the mission assigned to her by the hierarchy overlords, which was to hunt down the abyssal dragon's avatar. Now, this knight who had been silently carrying out his mission suddenly found Noah, and directly mentioned that he wanted to talk to Noah. Everyone was a little surprised, but that was to be expected. Thus, even Pest couldn't help herself from muttering those words. I thought that someone like the Halloween Queen who occupies the top position in the box court wouldn't be interested in that guy. Before Chu Feng could finish saying those words, Pest started to tremble violently. Because, at the side, Letitia was staring at Pest with emotionless eyes, causing Pest's heart to tremble in fear. In fact, Pest was not the only one who thought so. Including Black Rabbit, Flying Bird, and Yao, the rest of the people thought so. Among the 3 digits, the Halloween Queen was an exception. Although she belonged to the 3 digits, in terms of strength, the Halloween Queen had long surpassed the 3 digits and was enough to be promoted to the 2 digits. Otherwise, how could she be a match for White Yiksha? Not to mention, the Halloween Queen was one of the central figures of the cultic gods. It was not as if there were no 3 digits under her command. Because of this, everyone guessed that the Queen's Knight did not look for Noah because Noah's strength was not enough for the Halloween Queen's direct subordinates to personally poach him. Only Noah knew. Although the Queen's Knight before him had not come to look for him in the past 2 days, she had actually been secretly observing Noah all this time. At this moment, the Queen's Knight suddenly mentioned that she wanted to talk. Noah immediately looked deeply at her. Faced with Noah's gaze, the Queen's Knight did not avoid his gaze. Instead, she looked back at him with a sincere gaze. That neither servile nor overbearing, noble and unquestionable integrity, caused Noah to involuntarily think of Artoria. His expression eased slightly. Thus, Noah spoke. Do you want to talk here? No, the Queen's Knight shook her head without any hesitation. If possible, I wish to talk to you alone. Alone? Everyone frowned. Why do you want to talk alone? Letitia objected. What matter can't be discussed here? The Queen's Knight muttered to herself for a moment before saying, this matter is indeed not suitable to be mentioned in a place with too many people. Because this is a direct order from the Queen. The Queen. Everyone could not help but be taken aback. Noah, on the other hand, had a thoughtful look in his eyes. He seemed to have understood something. Then, the Queen's Knight said to Noah. Please don't worry, I'm just asking Your Excellency a few questions on behalf of the Queen. Everyone present immediately shut their mouths. It seemed that the title of Halloween Queen had successfully intimidated everyone. I understand. Noah met the Queen's Knight's gaze and nodded. Then, let's go outside and talk. The Queen's Knight naturally had no objection. At that moment, Noah and the Queen's Knight walked out of the door together. Seeing Noah and the Queen's Knight gradually disappear into the distance, Flying Bird spoke with some uneasiness. Chapter 1551. As soon as she opened her mouth, the Queen Knight who called herself Fei Si directly asked such a sudden and shocking question. However, Noah was not surprised at all as he spoke with a normal expression. You just said that you have a pardon issued by the Queen of Halloween. That is to say, this question, can I take it that the Queen asked you to ask me? Your Excellency is right. Fei Si nodded thoughtfully. This is indeed the question that the Queen asked me to ask. Speaking of this, Fei Si thought for a moment and then shook her head. No, that's not right either. The Queen only asked me to confirm if Lord White Yiksha had really transferred the sovereignty of the sun to you. She didn't ask me to directly ask Your Excellency. Directly asking Your Excellency was just a method of confirmation. Noah did not expect Fei Si to answer like this and was a little surprised. As for what Fei Si wanted to talk to him about, Noah had already guessed it. Because, as mentioned earlier, the Queen of Halloween was the center of the cultic gods. His existence could almost represent the entire group of gods in the Celtic Empire. Now, many of the gods in the upper echelons were coveting the sovereignty of the sun in White Yiksha's hands. They were trying to gather more than half of the sovereignty of the sun and create a new box court. In this way, the Celtic gods naturally became one of the existences that coveted the sovereignty of the sun. The great sage, Heaven's equal, had said, in the upper echelons, not everyone was in favor of abandoning the current box court and gathering the sovereignty of the sun to create a new box court. Therefore, whether or not the Queen of Halloween agreed to this proposal, Noah could not say. However, even if this issue was abandoned, it was impossible for the Queen of Halloween not to pay attention to Noah. In the box court, the sovereignty of the sun, which had the most important position, was divided into a total of 24. As the sovereign of the sun, even the 3 strongest species and the many god groups in the heaven realm had the idea of fighting for it. In the past, when the ownership of the sun had not been decided, how could there not be a bloody battle between the various god groups and the strongest species? However, in the box court, although having power was a very important part, having power did not mean that one could do whatever one wanted in the box court. This was because, in the box court, what decided everything was not power, but the game of gifts. In view of this, in the past, in order to determine the ownership of the 24 suns, Hecate had once held a game of bestowment that was open to the entire world. The name of the bestowment game was Solar Sovereignty War. At that time, he stood out and challenged the trial of the sun's sovereignty as White Knight Star Spirit. He repeatedly participated in countless games, defeated the sun god of each god group, and obtained more than half of the 24 sun sovereigns. He was White Yiksha. At that time, Queen Halloween also participated in the Solar Sovereignty War and competed with White Yiksha many times. Although she lost to White Yiksha in the end, she also obtained 6 Solar Sovereignty War and became an existence second only to White Yiksha in the gift game. It was from then on that White Yiksha and the Queen of All Saints fought each other as opponents, burying a grudge and becoming enemies that lasted for thousands of years. Under such circumstances, White Yiksha actually transferred all the solar sovereignty that he had competed for at that time to Noah. As White Yiksha's opponent and enemy, how could Queen Halloween not be curious about Noah? Therefore, after receiving this news, Queen Halloween was very likely to get in touch with Phase C immediately and let Phase C confirm the accuracy of this news. In addition, the Solar Sovereignty War was an extremely important existence. As a person who held 6 of the Solar Sovereignty War, it was impossible for her not to understand this point. Whether it was public or private, she would have contact with Noah. Noah expected this. However, Noah did not expect that Phase C would actually ask directly to confirm whether he had more than half of the Solar Sovereignty War in his hands. Noah thought that this was Queen Halloween's idea. In surprise, Noah asked bluntly, "Do you believe that I won't lie to you?" Direct question. This method of confirmation, no matter from which angle, was the most unwise. After all, no one could be sure that Noah would obediently answer, or simply muddle through, or even spread false information, right? It was impossible for Phase C not to understand this. However, in this regard, Phase C just gently shook her head. "I thought so at first, but according to my observations over the past 2 days, you are not the kind of person who would play tricks." "Oh." Noah raised an eyebrow. "Do you mean I don't know how to use my brain?" "On the contrary, you not only have great power, but you are also a wise man." Phase C looked directly at Noah. "So, I don't think you would tell a lie that is not only not believable, but also very easy to be exposed." Noah narrowed his eyes when he felt Phase C's gaze on him. In the end, he just shrugged his shoulders and left. As expected of Halloween Queen's favorite. "Although your way of doing things is not as cautious as I thought, your actions are upright and honest. I don't know whether to criticize or praise you." Saying this, Noah also answered Phase C's question. You are right, White Yiksha did indeed transfer all of the solar sovereignty war to me. Is that so? Fei Si pondered for a while, then said softly. In other words, you do have more than half of the solar sovereignty war, right? More than half of the solar sovereignty war. Noah looked at Fei Si meaningfully and then smiled. That's not right, I don't only have 14 solar sovereignty war, but 16. 16. Fei Si was stunned. Since you are Halloween Queen's favorite, you should have heard of it, right? Noah said. In the past, in No Name, before its flag and title were taken away, the divine beast called Sun Lion used to have a solar sovereignty war. Moreover, when Az Dakaha was sealed, the Great Alliance of Hierarchy at that time also used a solar sovereignty war as part of the seal. Hearing this, Fei Si understood. In other words, now, the solar sovereignty war also belongs to you, right? That's right. Noah admitted without hesitation, the smile on his face became more intense. Then, after knowing this, what does Halloween Queen's favorite intend to do? The Queen's knight named Fei Si went silent. Noah ignored Fei Si's silence and looked at her, quietly waiting for Fei Si's answer. After a while, Fei Si sighed. If, on behalf of the Queen, I want to use something of equivalent value to exchange for the solar sovereignty war from you, would you agree? Exchange for the solar sovereignty war. Noah could not help but laugh. You really dare to say that, even if it's an exception among the 3 digits, the Queen only has 6 solar sovereignty war. Is there anything else that can be used to exchange for 16 solar sovereignty war? It's not that there isn't anything. Fei Si said sternly. For example, if you are willing to transfer the solar sovereignty war to us, we can guarantee that No Name will rise to 4 digits and take back the glory of being the strongest community in the East District. The unexpected bargaining chip made the smile on Noah's face slowly freeze. Guarantee that a community would rise to 4 digits. Moreover, it was a No Name that had no flag, no name, and was at the bottom of the 7 digits. If this sentence was said by someone else, Noah would have already mocked them. However, when it came from the favorite of the Queen of Halloween, it couldn't be more convincing. If they could obtain the help of the Queen of Halloween, who was an exception among the 3 digits, then even if No Name rose to 4 digits, it would not be impossible for them to regain the glory of being the strongest community in the East District. It was because he understood this that Noah was speechless. He did not expect Fei Si to use this trick. This was indeed out of Noah's expectations. After all, Noah could care less about anything, but he cared most about his companions. Fei Si had hit Noah's soft spot. Chapter 1552. For Noah, sun sovereignty was at best something that could strengthen himself and make him stronger. Apart from that, the purpose of sun sovereignty was to summon star beasts and let them fight for him. One had to know that the existence of a star beast had at least a 4-digit level of combat power, and was even comparable to the 3 strongest species of box ting. With such a helper, it was simply unimaginable. Although Noah would not be able to summon the star beasts of this world even if he used sun sovereignty after leaving this world, the strengthening effects and various abilities of sun sovereignty were still quite good. However, for the world of box ting, the importance of sun sovereignty was not only reflected in terms of power. No matter which world it was, the existence of the sun was necessary. Without the sun, life would not be able to survive. It was precisely because of this that if the gods of the heavens wanted to create a new box ting, they had to have more than half of sun sovereignty. Otherwise, without sun sovereignty, there would be no way for sunlight to appear in the new world, and life would not be able to continue to survive. That was not all. The existence of the sun was even deeply related to the laws of the heavens. If the new box ting did not have the grace of the sun, it would definitely cause the entire laws of the heavens to collapse, which would affect the world itself. In the end, the universe of the various myths would be completely messed up because of this, causing the gods to go extinct one by one. That was not impossible. Therefore, to create a new box ting, sun sovereignty was absolutely necessary. Apart from that, sun sovereignty also had various other uses. For example, Galji needed the sovereignty of the sun to perfect his spirituality and become the supreme savior of the world. For example, the gods of various god groups could use sun sovereignty to create all kinds of divine beasts and star beasts that had a deep relationship with the sun to increase their strength. For example, individuals, or even groups of people who had comprehended the power of the sun might be able to have more experience and understanding of the power of the sun by using sun sovereignty. From there, they would be able to sublimate into a god like the son of the sun, or even the god of the sun. For example, if one obtained sun sovereignty, they could even change the nature of the existing sun and obtain all kinds of miracles. All in all, sun sovereignty had a wide range of uses. Even for those who had 2 or 3 digits, it was a treasure trove. It was even an inexhaustible treasure trove. Because of this, Noah was able to ask Athena and Ashtar to start from the nature of sun sovereignty and develop another way to use sun sovereignty. From this, it could be seen how important the sovereignty of the sun was. It was not without reason that everyone was pursuing it. However, no matter how important it was, in Noah's eyes, the sovereignty of the sun could not be compared to the importance of his companions. If the sun's sovereignty could allow Noah's companions to live a peaceful and happy life without any worries, Noah would be willing to give away all 24 sun sovereignty, let alone the 16 sun sovereignty that he had. It was unknown if Faye C had seen through Noah's regard for his companions. That was why she proposed to raise No-Name's value to 4 digits in exchange for the sovereignty of the sun. This made it impossible for Noah to object in the first place. However, Noah was not a fool. He would not be blinded just because he was moved. Thus, Noah took a deep breath and calmly asked such a question. I heard that the upper echelons of the Hakadah are ready to abandon the lower realm and go to build a new Hakadah, right? Faye C's breath stopped slightly. Under such circumstances, Noah continued. I've also heard that only the Asura gods and Buddhas of the upper echelons can move to the new box court. The rest will be abandoned by the various groups of gods and will be buried with Az-Dakaha. I wonder if that's true. Faye C fell into an indescribable silence. Looking at the silent Faye C, Noah said sarcastically. If I give the sovereignty of the sun to Queen of All Hallows, can Queen of All Hallows make the decision and be responsible for destroying Az-Dakaha and protect the entire Hakadah? That's impossible. Faye C closed her eyes. Even the Queen would not be able to destroy absolute evil. Az-Dakaha has the property that only humans can kill him. Moreover, Az-Dakaha also has another cosmology, which has the power to kill gods. Noah exposed Faye C's thoughts in one breath. No matter how many gods come from the heavenly realm, they will only make Az-Dakaha stronger. Once he is killed, even his existence will be erased. He will not be able to revive even if he wants to, which is equivalent to completely disappearing. The upper echelons of the gods would not take such a big risk to deal with an opponent that cannot be killed, right? Faye C was speechless. In fact, it was also because of this reason that many gods in the heavenly realm were prepared to abandon the Hakadah after Az-Dakaha broke out of the seal. Of course, this was not all. The War God Council, led by Sakra, was in existence that considered the living beings of the lower realm. Among the rest of the gods, there were more or less people who were unwilling to abandon the Hakadah. However, since the decision to abandon the Hakadah had been made, it meant that this group of people was only a minority. I only have one question for you. Noah stared at Faye C. Did the Queen of Halloween agree to abandon the Hakadah? The Queen did not agree, but she did not object either. She is a neutral party. Faye C answered honestly. Whether she continues to live in the old Hakata or moves to the new Hakata, to the Queen, there is no difference. In other words, even if you can't say that she is not going to help, the Queen still intends to be a bystander, right? Noah sighed. Then, I'm sorry, but I will not hand over the sovereignty of the sun. Is this okay? Fei Si couldn't help but ask. If you use the sovereignty of the sun as an exchange, I believe that with the Queen's ability, it is not impossible for her to obtain the opportunity to move to the new Hakata for everyone. But it's only Thna name, right? Noah said faintly. Even the Queen has no way to obtain the right to live in the new Hakata for everyone in the Hakata, right? Yes. Fei Si first lowered her head, then said. I didn't expect that Sir Noah would go to this extent for the people in the Hakata who you don't know. No, I don't have the sentiments of a savior. Noah curled his lips and smiled. However, if I were to abandon the people I could have saved and flee for my life, how would I be any different from those gods? After saying that, Noah turned his head and looked at his companions in the throne room. Moreover, if I make such a decision, I believe that not only will my companions not be happy about it, they will also scold me. I will also completely fail to live up to White Yiksha's expectations. That is not something I want to do. I understand. Fei Si finally nodded and looked at Noah. In that case, I will not mention this matter to Your Excellency Noah again. However, Your Excellency Noah, please be careful. The gods at the top will not compromise because of this. They will definitely come to you. I know. Noah glanced at Fei Si. Including the Celtic gods, right? Yes. Fei Si nodded indifferently. After all, although the Queen has a lot of say in the Celtic gods, she is not an existence that can decide the fate of the gods alone. I believe that there are also many people who want to move to the new Hakata, right? Also, Sir Noah, you just said that even if the Queen does not intend to leave people in the lurch, she intends to look on coldly from the sidelines. That statement is wrong. Fei Si looked up and stared at Noah. Indeed, the Queen is not like Lord White Yiksha, who cares and cares for the people of the lower realms, but she is not someone who will retreat in the face of a strong enemy. Otherwise, I would not be here. After saying that, Fei Si turned around and walked towards the throne hall. Looking at Fei Si who was walking away, Noah laughed bitterly. That's true. Chapter 1553. The girls in the throne room did not know that Noah and Fei Si were discussing the future of Hakata, something that would decide the fate of everyone in the lower levels of Hakata. They could only see Noah and Fei Si standing outside the door, discussing something. Then, not long after, the conversation ended. After parting ways with Noah, Fei Si walked into the throne room and bowed to the girls. Well then, I'll go rest. What's wrong? Sarah stepped forward. Have you finished what you wanted to talk about? Yes, Fei Si looked at Sarah and said. If there are any new missions, let me know. I understand. Sarah nodded solemnly. Sorry for troubling you. It's nothing. After all, we're all comrades in the same camp. Fei Si looked at everyone in the room. Then I'll take my leave. Sorry. Everyone nodded, including Fei Si. She turned around and walked towards the living quarters of the minister's throne hall. After sending Fei Si off, the girls welcomed Noah's return. Master. Letitia turned her gaze to Noah who was also walking in from the door. She waited until Noah was in front of her before she asked. Is everything okay? The girls all looked at Noah, as if they were interested in the conversation between Noah and Fei Si. Not only that, but Black Rabbit, Fei Niao, Yao, and the others also seemed to be a little uneasy. Noah, who saw through the girls' thoughts, laughed out loud. Don't worry, the Queen Knight is not here to poach me to join the Halloween Queen's camp. Is that so? Yao tilted her head and asked bluntly. Then why is she looking for you? Miss Yao. Black Rabbit quickly pulled Yao's hand. Isn't it a little inappropriate to ask like this? Yes, Hakatsuki-san, Fei Yao reminded her. No matter what, they don't want us to hear the content of their conversation. It's not very polite for you to ask directly. What does it matter? Pest crossed her arms and glanced at Noah. If it's not something shameful, it shouldn't be a problem to say it, right? Shadora opened her mouth. That doesn't sound too good either. It doesn't matter. Pest's words aren't completely wrong, Noah shrugged. However, although it can't be said to be shameful, it's not a pleasant topic either. It won't do you any good to hear it. I don't even know if I should tell you. He was being targeted by many god groups in the upper echelons of the box court, and conflicts could occur at any time, entering a state of all-out war. If Noah were to say such words, it would probably scare everyone present to death. After all, that would mean that Noah would have to become enemies with millions or even tens of millions of gods. Among them, there were those extremely terrifying gods with double digits and triple digits, as well as many existences like the three most powerful species. To everyone present, whose highest level was only in the 4 digits, this was really something that was enough to scare them out of their wits. Moreover, among the group of girls present, there were not only his own people, but also Sarah and Shadora. If possible, Noah did not want to involve unrelated outsiders to face the threat of many god groups in the heaven realm. It was enough for Noah to bear that kind of threat alone. It was not that Noah was treating himself as an outsider, but even if he were to say it, it would only increase the uneasiness and worry of the group of girls. There was no other use. Similarly, Noah was not trying to be brave and planned to bear all the burden. If he couldn't do it himself, Noah wouldn't mind borrowing the strength of others. However, it was not that Noah did not have any means to deal with it. To let Noah face the many gods of the upper level alone, he definitely did not know how to write the word death. Noah's current strength was at most a triple-digit level in the heaven realm. And among the many god groups that he was about to face, not to mention triple digits, even double digits might appear. Under such circumstances, Noah, who was only in the 3 digits, against so many terrifying existences, wanting to win was simply wishful thinking. The great sage, Heaven's Equal, was a good example. As the leader of the great sage of 7 heavens, who had once clashed with the entire heaven realm and fought against the most god groups in history, although the great sage, Heaven's Equal, had turned the entire heaven realm upside down, in the end, he was suppressed by Shakyamuni, who was in the 2 digits. Compared to the great sage, Heaven's Equal, Noah did not have so many people around him, and every one of them was the brother and sister of a famous demon king. Furthermore, he was the enemy of the entire upper level of the heaven realm, which was more than the number of god groups that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, had. In the end, the result would definitely not be good. However, Noah also had a trump card that the great sage, Heaven's Equal, did not. With it, Noah's chances of winning against the many god groups in the heaven realm, even if he was alone, was not 0. Of course, Noah's chances of winning were not 100%. For this, Noah felt that it was necessary for him to further improve his strength. Thinking of this, Noah felt a little anxious. At that moment, Noah said to the group of girls present, "No matter what it is, you will know in the future. Today has been a tiring day, it's time to rest." Hearing this, everyone looked at each other, and finally, they nodded helplessly. The night was like a black curtain, enveloping the entire vampire castle that was suspended in midair. The faint, cool moonlight penetrated the clouds and poured down, shining into the silent castle and the quiet throne hall. Finally, through a window in the throne hall, the moonlight shone into a room, bathing Noah, who had just come in from outside, in the moonlight. After entering his room, Noah sat on the bed and closed his eyes slightly. His mind did not turn to the cosmic sea in the depths of his heart, but sank into a dark hole. Pause. Within the dark void, an extremely vast amount of energy was constantly circulating. It was like an endless sea with no end in sight. In the surroundings of the dark void, strands of brand new energy surged in from all directions like streams of water. They poured into the void like air currents, causing the endless sea of energy to continuously accumulate. That dark hole was naturally Noah's energy source. Ever since the snake of the infinite dragon god Orpheus was used as a base to create such an energy source that could accommodate endless energy, the energy inside had been absorbing the energy automatically recovered from Noah's body, entering a state of endless growth. At this point, the energy stored in this energy source was almost impossible to use up. The God Slayer was known to have a curse power that was hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of times more than the average famous magician and conjurer. The curse power stored in Noah's energy source was probably hundreds of millions, billions, tens of billions, or even hundreds of billions of times more than the God Slayer. How could this level of energy be used up? Even if it was compared to the black mud from the Black Holy Grail, which was known to have unlimited magic power, if all the energy in the energy source were to be converted into magic power, then it would be millions or even tens of millions of times more, right? However, this energy was only inexhaustible. It was not truly limitless. Now, in Noah's hands, he held a card that could make this energy truly infinite. Feeling the abundant energy in the energy source in his body, Noah opened his eyes. With a flip of his hand, a bag immediately appeared. Reaching into the bag, Noah took out a piece of precious jade. It was a piece of precious jade that was the size of a palm, and its surface was engraved with mysterious runes that exuded radiance. In this piece of precious jade was sealed the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine. Looking at the precious jade in his hand, Noah muttered to himself, "If I can get the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine, then my energy will become truly infinite, and even my physical strength and mental strength can become an infinite perpetual motion machine, right?" That's right. Noah was thinking about the third perpetual motion machine. Chapter 1554. The demon king named Maxwell was actually just a paradox demon that was denied by science. As mentioned earlier, demons like this were actually very weak. Even if they were attacked by ordinary physical means, they could be torn apart like paper tigers. Let alone becoming a four-digit existence, it would be difficult for such a demon to become a demon king who abused the organizer's authority. In the end, not only did such a Maxwell successfully become a demon king, but he also became a four-digit existence. In the end, though it was partly due to the fact that he was a demon that mastered thermodynamics and could freely control the power of the realms of cold and warmth, as well as perform spatial leaps at will, it was still the third perpetual motion machine that gave Maxwell such power and status. It was because of this spiritual core that Maxwell became an almost undefeatable existence. Not only that, the reason why Maxwell could control the realm of cold and warmth to the level of space jump was also largely due to the third perpetual motion machine's ability to generate energy out of nothing, which allowed him to use the power of heat and cold to expand a lot. Without the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine, let alone a four-digit number, Maxwell did not even know if he could squeeze into a five-digit number. Such a spiritual core could have such potential when used by a demon who was like a paper tiger. If it was used by Noah, it would be helpful, right? Although Noah was not like Maxwell, who did not have a body and could rely on the third perpetual motion machine's ability to generate energy out of nothing to resurrect infinitely, if he could obtain the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine, then at least Noah's magic power, divine might energy, and even physical strength and mental strength might reach infinite. In that case, it would be of great help to Noah. After all, regardless of the fact that magic power, and divine might were inexhaustible and could be considered semi-infinite energy, and regardless of the fact that physical strength had never been a factor that troubled Noah, just the fact that his mental strength could be infinite was already a great help to Noah. Firstly, Noah would be able to use spells that originated from his ability points without any restrictions. He would no longer have to worry about fainting due to the exhaustion of his spirit. It was even possible that the spells themselves could be strengthened. Secondly, the limitless power of the spirit would cause Noah's mental burden to be equally limitless. Even if he did not use the dragon sun's sovereignty to strengthen himself, he could still bear the burden of using his avatars at the same time. Moreover, it wasn't just the mental burden of using 2 avatars at the same time. Even if it was the mental burden of using all 10 avatars at the same time, it was possible to bear it completely. Then, Noah only needed to keep fighting, gain experience, and increase his ability value. He also needed to solve the problem of the burden on his body and increase the number of avatars he could use at the same time. Then, why would he worry about not being able to become stronger? However, it was not so easy to obtain the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine. Staring at the jade in his hand, Noah narrowed his eyes. After a moment of hesitation, he extracted some energy from the energy source in his body and poured it into the jade through his fingers. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, the jade in Noah's hand trembled violently, and a burst of strong light burst out from within. Immediately, Noah discovered it. The little energy he poured into the jade seemed to have drilled into a storm and was crazily sucked in. Following this little bit of energy, an extremely crazy will was transmitted to Noah's heart. Roar, ah, 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 ah. Suddenly, in the depths of Noah's mind, a crazy, beast-like roar without any rationality resounded. Noah was shocked, as if he had been electrocuted. He quickly cut off the energy that was poured into the jade. The next second, the crazy roar that resounded directly in Noah's mind and the crazy will that was transmitted to his heart immediately disappeared. Sigh. Noah sighed. It really didn't work. The spirit of the third perpetual motion machine was not without an owner. The jade in Noah's hand did not seal the third perpetual motion machine without an owner, but the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine, the Demon King. Under such circumstances, unless Noah could extract the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine from Maxwell's body, otherwise, how could he obtain the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine? Just now, the crazy will that he felt in the jade was Maxwell's resistance, right? TSK. Noah could not help but be speechless. Since you have already lost your rationality, why don't you just die and leave the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine behind? As soon as this sentence fell, a young, clear, but mature and deep voice suddenly sounded in Noah's mind. If you want to obtain the so-called spirit, I also agree with you doing so. The familiar voice made Noah startled at first, but he immediately reacted. Athena. Hearing Noah's call, Athena smiled with some joy. Ever since I became your follower, I can often feel that you have troubles. I really don't understand how I can be subdued by such a good-for-nothing person like you. Long-winded. Noah said with some awkwardness. I am a human, not a desireless god like you. How can I not have troubles? Gods naturally have troubles too, Athena retorted. For example, I used to worry about whether to let you die in the hands of Prince Rama, or to end your fate with you before Prince Rama awakens. In the end, I could not bear to see you die in the hands of anyone other than me, so I resolutely declared war on you. Although, in the end, neither you nor Rama can do anything to me. Noah curled his lips and asked. Since you have come out, can I understand that you have a way to help me obtain the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine? Didn't I tell you the method just now? Athena said so. Kill that useless demon and use the power of the priest. You should be able to smoothly extract the spirit of the third perpetual motion machine, right? Kill. Noah rolled his eyes. If I could kill it, would I still have to worry about it? Why can't you kill it? Athena said faintly. Use your horde to create a slave beast, let it swallow the bead in your hand, and use the power of destruction on the demon inside. Isn't that enough? Destruction. Noah frowned. There is no way to defeat Maxwell, who has the third perpetual motion machine. The power of destruction will only make him die once, and he will be resurrected soon, right? If you use the horde of destruction, of course, the result will be the same. Athena said so in a very calm tone. But you don't only have the power of authority. Don't you have the grace of the goddesses of other worlds? Grace? Noah's heart skipped a beat. Are you talking about my ability value? That's right. Athena's words woke him up. There is a development ability in your ability value called mystery. It seems to be a power that can create miracles to a certain extent. If this ability is triggered, perhaps you will be able to kill the target that you originally couldn't kill. But, Noah said with some hesitation, when I was fighting with Maxwell, I killed him so many times, but it didn't trigger mystery. It's just a matter of probability. Athena reminded him. That's why I asked you to use the power of the horde to create a slave beast and swallow that demon. Using the power of destruction repeatedly will trigger the development ability of mystery sooner or later. Noah was suddenly enlightened. Thank you, Athena. Athena didn't say anything else. It seemed that she really couldn't stand the troubled Noah anymore, so she came out to remind him. Noah didn't mind and turned the energy in his body into a source of divine power. You have violated the contract and brought evil to the world. The Lord said, sinners will be punished. Their backs will be crushed, their bones, their hair, their brains will be dug out, and their blood and soil will be trampled on. If I can't get close to you, I will follow the Lord's words and give you a hammer of destruction. In Noah's heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the 10 patterns turned and pointed to the horde. Chapter 1555. Bang! Divine power surged out from Noah's body like waves of chi. Like a flame, it enveloped Noah's body, slowly burning. Noah's surging divine power surged in the space and gathered in front of Noah. With a spin, it condensed into a golden wolf. Roar! The burning golden wolf raised its head and howled at the moon. Looking at the golden wolf in front of him, Noah raised his hand and threw out the precious jade engraved with mysterious runes. The golden wolf's eyes suddenly flashed with a faint light, as if it had received some kind of order at this moment. Its 4 limbs tightened, and with a spring, its entire body pounced toward the jade treasure that was thrown at it. In mid-air, the golden wolf opened its mouth wide and swallowed the jade that was engraved with mysterious runes. Then, it steadily landed on the ground. In the next second, the golden wolf lay down, closed its eyes, and fell into a deep sleep. However, as the golden wolf fell into a deep slumber, a dazzling white light slowly bloomed from its body. The brilliant white light was not very strong, but it was like a small sun, enveloping the golden wolf's body. Buzz, 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 buzz. Right at this moment, within the brilliant white light that enveloped the golden wolf's entire body, a burst of intense light that was completely different seemed to tremble and burst forth. Roar! That, a frenzied roar sounded from the golden wolf's body. As if he had expected this, Noah increased the divine power in his body and poured it into the golden wolf's body. Clang! Suddenly, the dazzling white light that blossomed from the golden wolf's body became even brighter, as if it was suppressing the sudden appearance of a completely different intense light, firmly suppressing it, and pulsating it again and again. That scene was like a beating heart. As the dazzling white light pulsated, the completely different intense light was suppressed bit by bit, causing an even more violent resistance. Roar! it was Noah's misconception. Noah felt that Maxwell's frenzied roar seemed to have a faint taste of despair and pain. But this discovery not only did not arouse Noah's pity, but it also made him more spirited. He simply used the dragon's sovereign son to strengthen the output of his divine power and poured it into the golden wolf's body. Clang! The dazzling white light was like a real sun, constantly flickering with brilliance. Within the brilliance, a completely different intense light repeatedly trembled, as if a beast was trying to break free from its cage, but was unable to do so and could only be firmly suppressed. At this moment, the destructive power from the supreme-level destruction magic, Crush, was used dozens of times per second on the jade that was swallowed by the golden wolf. In other words, Maxwell, who was sealed in the jade, was dying at the rate of 10 times per second. Roha! Maxwell's roars were like those of a dying beast, becoming crazier and crazier. Hearing this roar, Noah suddenly smiled. If I continue to wait like this, the development ability of mystery will be triggered sooner or later. I'll just wait for a while. Leaving these words, Noah closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep like the golden wolf lying on the ground. Only the surging divine power continued to flow out of Noah's divine power source and into the golden wolf's body, maintaining the continuous effect of the Crush ability. The night deepened. Unknowingly, the full moon in the sky was covered by dark clouds, causing the moonlight pouring down on the vampire castle that was suspended in mid-air to fade away. The surroundings became dim. In the room without a trace of light, Noah kept his eyes closed and just mechanically poured out his divine power. His consciousness fell into a half-awake state, resting. The golden wolf lying on the ground also seemed to be in a deep sleep. It did not move for a long time, and only the brilliant white light on its body continued to flicker. Taking a closer look, the strong light, which was completely different from the brilliant white light, had gradually dimmed. Not only that, but the crazy roar that resounded from the golden wolf's body also gradually weakened, until now, it was almost inaudible. Noah did not pay attention to all of this, but let it develop freely. Until a certain moment, the final radiance of the setting sun, a roar full of despair and pain rang out from the golden wolf's body with unprecedented loudness. Bang! The next moment, like a piece of glass shattering in the golden wolf's body, a muffled explosion sounded. At the same time, Noah suddenly opened his eyes, and his dark and deep eyes were filled with joy. The golden wolf, who had fallen into a deep sleep, also opened its eyes at this moment. It stood up and gradually turned into a cloud of mist, carrying the brilliant white light and disappearing into the air. Then, Noah saw it. A light source was floating in the air where the golden wolf had disappeared. Looking at the light source, Noah's eyes flickered. Is that the spiritual core of the third perpetual motion machine? Not knowing if it could understand Noah's voice, the light source suspended in mid-air seemed to have become somewhat brighter. Seeing this, Noah smiled slightly and extended his hand toward the light source. The light source suspended in mid-air immediately flew out and landed in Noah's hand. Undoubtedly, there was an unknown light source in his hand, but Noah did not feel any weight or touch, as if the light source did not exist at all. He did not touch anything. However, when Noah raised his hand, the light source lying quietly in his hand moved as well. Holding this unknown light source, the smile on Noah's face gradually disappeared. Immediately, Noah suddenly raised his hand and pressed the light source in his hand directly into his chest. With a very slight tremor, the light source slowly merged into Noah's body. Noah closed his eyes and immersed his mind into his body, controlling the light source that entered his body and moving it in the direction of the energy source. Finally, the light source merged into the dark hole-like energy source. The dark hole-like energy source suddenly stagnated. Like an explosion, in Noah's body, the dark hole-like energy burst open. The endless energy originally stored in the dark hole-like energy suddenly rushed into Noah's body like a flood. That terrifying energy could definitely blow up an existence with a god-level body in an instant. Even if it's Noah, with the blessing of LV, 6-level ability value, his body's endurance is superb, but it is absolutely impossible to withstand such terrifying energy. If it were before, at this moment, Noah's body would burst like a ball. At that time, the terrifying energy released from his body would instantly destroy the entire vampire's castle. However, like a miracle, the terrifying energy did not know why, but it did not burst Noah's body, but disappeared little by little. No. It did not disappear. To be more precise, it should be said that it was integrated into Noah's body little by little. Originally, with the strength of Noah's body, it could not accommodate so much energy. Therefore, it was necessary to open up an energy source at the beginning to indirectly obtain semi-infinite energy. Now, Noah's body is like a bottomless pit. Even if there is no energy source, he still accepts the terrifying level of endless energy without any burden, and let the energy be accommodated into Noah's body little by little. Noah only felt that his body was absorbing energy, and a sense of fullness emerged little by little. After all, in the past, Noah had only stored and used an almost endless amount of energy. When all these energies were integrated into Noah's body, Noah really had these energies. Under the attack of the increasingly high sense of fullness, Noah could not help but close his eyes again, quietly feeling the changes in his body. The night gradually passed. Chapter 1556. Just like that, the night gradually receded, ushering in a new day. The gentle sunlight shone down from the sky into another room in the minister's throne hall. In this room, Letitia, who was wearing a maid's uniform, was tying a ribbon to the back of her head. She looked at her reflection in the mirror in front of her. After confirming the degree of cleanliness, she nodded in satisfaction, and then muttered to herself helplessly. Habits are really a scary thing. As a former ruler of the hierarchy and a former royal of the vampires, Letitia was very noble in terms of identity, status, and bloodline. Letitia was actually satisfied with her maid's attire. It had to be said that habits were really scary. If someone had told Letitia in the past that she would be satisfied with her maid's attire one day, Letitia would definitely not have believed it. Unfortunately, the current Letitia was no longer the Letitia of the past. I don't have any nostalgia for the identity of the king of vampires. Letitia looked at the maid in the mirror and smiled sweetly. And compared to the life of being sold as a slave in the past, I should be satisfied to be able to be a little maid by master's side now. A beautiful smile appeared on Letitia's charming face. Her waist-length golden hair also reflected the sunlight that shone in through the window, making this young and tender little girl appear astonishingly cute. Now that master has returned, it's time for me to continue my work. In the past month, Noah had lost contact with Aziz Dakaha because of the duel. Since then, although Letitia had always believed that Noah was not dead, she could no longer fulfill her duties as a maid, and this made Letitia feel empty in her heart. Now that Noah was back, Letitia could not wait to continue fulfilling her duties. As a member of the royal family of the vampires, who was once known as the Knights of the Box Court, the ruler of all social classes, and the demon king Dracula, whose name struck fear in people's hearts, the fact that such an existence could not wait to serve others was probably a disease. However, Letitia was willing to have this disease. She sincerely hoped that if this was a disease, it would be best if it could never be cured. Towards her master who had saved her twice, Letitia's heart was filled with more than just gratitude. As a subordinate, Letitia, who had been silently observing Noah from behind, had long been impressed by his temperament and bearing. It would be great if my descendants could also have this kind of awareness. After saying this, Letitia tidied herself up and left her room. Castle of the Vampires, Throne Hall. Letitia walked straight through the corridor that was connected to the main hall and continued forward. Lady Letitia. Good morning, Lady Letitia. Lady Letitia. Along the way, many members of the East, South, and North communities immediately bowed respectfully when they saw Letitia. Good morning. Letitia didn't hold any grudges and returned the greetings to the people around her, causing the people around her to be more or less a little frightened. If there were outsiders present and saw a group of fully armed people bowing respectfully to a maid who looked only 11 or 12 years old with a look of fear and trepidation, they would definitely find it unbelievable. However, this was a very common scene in this place. Because everyone already knew that in the entire castle of the vampires, this little girl dressed as a maid had the highest level of combat power. It was believed that everyone in the vampires' castle of the vampires would never forget this scene for the rest of their lives. Back then, when Az-Dakaha recovered from his injuries and made a comeback, waging a great war against the rulers of the various classes and the various communities, the little maid in front of him removed the ribbon on her head and transformed into a mature and brave knight. She fought together with the Queen Knight, Faith Reese, who was directly under the command of the Queen of All Saints, and held back the three-headed demonic dragon. Of course, in addition to Letitia and Faith Reese, at that time, among the people who were active at the forefront and directly fighting against Az-Dakaha, there were also White Yiksha and 16 knights. Other than these 4 people, the rest of the people only carried out long-range attacks on the periphery. They simply did not have the ability to intervene in a direct confrontation with the Demon King. In the end, 16 knights was seriously injured by Az-Dakaha, and White Yiksha was forced to use his authority as the organizer to seal Az-Dakaha. Only Letitia and Faith Reese were lucky enough not to suffer any serious injuries and returned safely. Therefore, as people who had personally witnessed Letitia's strength in that battle, no one here dared to treat Letitia as a servant just because she was dressed as a maid. Perhaps, in the entire box court, the only person who could truly treat Letitia as a servant was her master, Noah. Including the people and No Name, no one would truly treat Letitia as a maid. Unfortunately, other people's thoughts were their thoughts. Letitia's own thoughts were the most important. Ever since she became Noah's subordinate, Letitia had already decided on her own identity. Even if others did not treat Letitia as a maid, Letitia herself had to be clear about her identity as Noah's maid. Therefore, no matter what kind of person they were, Letitia, who had positioned herself as a maid, would always return the greeting. Until a voice rang out. "You're still as proper as before." Following this voice, Pest, who was also dressed in maid attire, slowly walked over from the other side of the corridor. The expression on her pretty face was extremely calm. Isn't it good to enjoy the respect of others once in a while? You are the one who should be more aware of your own identity. Letitia turned her gaze toward the calm Pest and said. Don't forget, you are also a maid. I am not a maid. I am only that guy's subordinate, Pest corrected. Even if he is my master, there is no reason for me to become a maid, right? Can't I be his follower or guard? Oh. Letitia's crimson eyes glowed with a hint of light. In other words, you are dissatisfied with your identity as a maid? Pest, who was being stared at by Letitia, stiffened. Her calm expression became somewhat weak. The pitiful Black Death original Demon King feared nothing in the world. Yet, he was completely suppressed by Letitia. It's not that I'm dissatisfied. Pest's expression was somewhat stiff. She spoke in a somewhat stubborn manner. It's just that, even if we are maids, we are still that guys. Before Pest could finish her words, Letitia's gaze turned dangerous. Sensing a chill running down her spine, Pest hurriedly changed her words. We are only master's maids. There is no need for us to treat others as maids, no. Hearing those words, Letitia wrinkled her beautiful brows and began to ponder. You can't say that everything you said is wrong, but as master's maids, if we act arrogantly and give others a feeling of superiority, master will also lose face. No matter what, we can't neglect basic etiquette. Pest curled her lips disapprovingly. But she did not say anything else. After all, Pest knew very well what was going on. Anything else could be discussed. However, when it came to Noah, as long as it was something that did not benefit Noah in the slightest, Letitia would definitely not negotiate. It was because she understood this point that Pest spoke as if she was possessed by some supernatural force. Are you really that willing to become that guy's subordinate and allow your authority to fall into the hands of others? This question caused Letitia to raise her eyes slightly. She looked straight at Pest. Only then did Pest realize what kind of question she asked. Her expression froze once again. With that one sentence, Pest's thoughts toward Noah were completely revealed. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.